Alright, so it's been about 2 months since Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have come out, and I finally thought that I would give my thoughts and opinions on them. Now, leading up to Gen 9, I knew nothing about the games. All I knew about the games was what the initial teaser trailer gave us, the designs of the 3 starters, and that was it. Now, the reason I decided to know nothing about these games going into it is just because I feel like Pokemon games are more enjoyable when you don't know what to expect from them. So I didn't watch any teasers, I didn't watch any trailers, I didn't look into any leaks, I even blocked a bunch of keywords and social media threads connected to Pokemon. I didn't even watch any Pokemon videos leading up to the entire release. And I feel like that was for the best because I ended up liking the games a whole lot more because of it. Now I feel like I've mentioned this in the past, but I didn't really like Gen 8 as a whole. I felt Sword and Shield were very lackluster. I didn't really like Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl because they just weren't good remakes in my mind. I never even finished Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon when those games came out. And while I did like the fresh air that Pokemon Legends Arceus gave us, I felt like I couldn't get over how much I wanted Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl to be like those games. So going into it, I already had low expectations for Gen 9, but surprisingly, it blew my expectations out the water. Just wanted to start off with that. Now, even though the games were buggy, even though they were laggy, I still felt like there were a lot of good strengths with this game. Starting off with the gimmick for this generation, Terastillization, I genuinely feel like these are the best mechanics we've had since Mega Evolution. Now, at first, I was pretty iffy on it. When I first saw Nemona use it in her second rival battle, I was just there, like, what the hell? It knocked me out from full. So first I had to wrap my head around Terastillization being extra stab on top of your regular typing. But then the more I thought about Terastillization, more about the use cases, you can use it to get stab on 3 types at once, or you could use it as a defensive typing, or even double down on your regular typing. So already off the bat, it gives so many use cases for so many Pokemon that otherwise would have been bad without it. And it makes battles so much more unpredictable. And I feel like that's what made it so fun, because like, the main thing I find fun about Pokemon are the Pokemon themselves. That's why I do Gen Locks, where, just like Black and White, where they force you to only use Gen 5 Pokemon, I willingly do that for every generation. So for Pokemon Scarlet, I exclusively use Gen 9 Pokemon. But with all the new use cases Terastillization introduced, that made it so much more fun to use these new Pokemon. You could literally come up with any strategy, and they would all equally be as viable as another one. So that made it less predictable and more fun in my opinion. And the starters as a whole, I felt were great. I was disappointed that Sprigatio evolved into a bipedal Pokemon again, sort of like Torracat and Incineroar. Of the 3 starters, I still feel that Meowscarada had the strongest and best design, but Skeleturge was definitely a close second, while Quaquaval, I think that's his name, I didn't fucking like his design at all. It's grown on me, but I just cannot get over that design. And also, this gen introduces more than 100 Pokemon. That's the first time since Gen 5 where they've done that. Oh man, that made it so much more fun. Because there was literally so many new Pokemon, so many new moves, so many new type combinations. Don't forget about those. All the new type combinations. And also other things I liked. I like how the Paradox Pokemon didn't have any names. The music and designs for Pokemon has always been great. But I feel like the designs this gen have definitely taken it a step further. The whole ancient Pokemon being like these whole primitive, dangerous, like type of Pokemon that will kill you if they see you. And the whole future Paradox Pokemon being literal robots, but they're not all steel and electric types. So when you fight the Paradox Pokemon, you literally have to wrap your head around, oh shit, these are not steel types. I had to actually figure out their typings. And overall, the open world, I feel like the open world was good enough. I felt like the biomes they included were decent enough as is. But one of the biggest surprises for me going into the game blind was that not only were there gym leaders, there were technically also totem Pokemon as well, but they were renamed Titan Pokemons because of course. And they even introduced 3 new routes, which one tackles the gym leaders, one tackles the Titans, one tackles the quote-unquote villain team. And throughout all 3 routes, there's essentially a type specialist for every single type. So that means already off the bat, there's so much this game lets you do. Where it's like, it's not like an 8-hour deal. It's like, this is an actual game that'll take you days to finish. And I love that. And on top of everything the game did, the games are just funny. They are literally just funny. Like, Pokemon has always been a game where if you try to apply logic into anything that happens, you'll start to realize how much the world breaks down. Like how a mafia boss essentially created a genetic being that was half human, half animal, that had stats that literally surpassed and rivaled gods. Pokemon has always had very hollow logic. But when you just look at the game as a whole, you start to realize how any of this is even possible. Like, you have a literal 3-year-old on the Elite Four And it even applies to other aspects of the game about how they made a gym leader a VTuber in real life. That's essentially what Iono is, a VTuber. That's it. And the fact that Larry is both a gym leader and an Elite Four member because he's overworked, and that hits a special type of nerve. And the final strength I think I'll talk about with these games is that they actually did the whole friend group thing very well. Nimona, Arven, Penny, not only did they each have their own roles to play in their own separate routes, but I feel like you actually get to bond with these characters and they have much more firm foundations than the friend group of Pokemon X and Y. X and Y, you were like this new neighbor moving into town. You don't really get to know any of the characters, and by the end of the game, you don't really care about any of them. And because we never got Pokemon Z, they never really elaborated on why we were friends with them to begin with, why we should even care about them. But I feel like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you actually do get to care about these characters. Whether it be Nimona, Arven, Penny, Clive, or even some of the teachers, you genuinely do get to bond with some of the characters, and you don't even really have to battle them or like do favors for them to actually befriend them. You can just talk to them and you get to know more about them. And I feel like that's a realistic standpoint where it's just like sometimes you just talk to people to get close to them, and I feel like that was a good strength of the game. Now before I go into the cons, I just want to talk about a bunch of my nitpicks with the game. First off, you can't disable animations. Second off, there's no set mode. Third off, it takes multiple tries to heal a Pokemon. That has not been a thing since Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. I don't know why they've done that. As well as a bunch of other stuff like they removed Hail. Secondly, there's still the 20-minute timer. Third off, there's like no Elite Four rematches. Which I know you can face the Elite Four in the Academy's tournaments, but what if I actually want to have an Elite Four experience where it's like I can't heal in between matches? So that kind of sucked, and they didn't bring over the Legends Arceus catch mechanics where you can catch Pokemon in the overworld without battling them. Now onto my genuine con with the games before I go into the 3 routes as a whole. Tear rates are bugged, where it's like you could be sitting there for like 1 minute straight and the timer is just depleting, but you're not allowed to do anything. Because the game doesn't know which order the characters do anything in, and such, the game just makes you sit there for like a minute straight, wasting time. And then suddenly the Pokemon loses like 50% of its health, its shield suddenly comes up. And while there has been patches to that, I think, it shouldn't have been like that from the beginning. Second off, the world is just empty. Like sometimes things fail to load. So it's like I would occasionally run into like an invisible wall. And also the towns were just empty as a whole. Like you would enter a store and it would literally only be a menu. And this extends into another issue, was just like characters in the background, they move at like half the rate of your trainer. The game is 30 FPS, but the characters in the background move like at 10 FPS, which doesn't make any sense. And going back onto the whole topic of accessories, the game has next to no clothing customization. Sure, you can change your shoes, you can change your socks, you can change your bag, you can change your hat, you can change your gloves. You can't take off the uniform. So even though your character themselves can look unique, the fact that everyone's always forced to wear a uniform is kind of annoying. Like Sword and Shield had so much diversity in clothing, but Scarlet and Violet just took a step back for no reason. It's just, there's like, I'm not at the school 100% of the time. I shouldn't be wearing a uniform 100% of the time. It just doesn't make sense. And there were a lack of side quests for some reason. It's like, that's like one of the main things about open world games, is that there are side quests everywhere. And it's not like they could have implemented it properly either. There was a school right there. You could have just had it where, oh, this student needs help with a book. Oh, the student wants this Pokemon, but they can't catch it on their own. Oh, they want to research this or that. It's like, they could have easily implemented side quests into the school to make the school feel more important to the story. And another problem I had with the game was that there was no actual direction. Now, what I mean by direction is that if you set a checkpoint, the game wouldn't tell you how to get there. There's like, think of Xenoblade Chronicles, where if you set a checkpoint, the game will literally outline a path for you to take so you can get there. But with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it just sort of points you in a direction, and you sort of need to follow the main path. But this is an open world game, so you're more often than not breaking away from the main path, like do a tear raid to catch Pokemon, whatever. So it's like you would often get lost and the game wouldn't tell you how to get back on track. Oh, you need to cross this river, but you haven't unlocked the Koraidon upgrade yet, so good luck trying to figure out a path on how to get there. If they ever release a DLC, I hope they sort of implement a line or tracking device where it's like, okay, follow this line and that's how you'll get to this checkpoint. Please do that. And I almost forgot this, but this is the biggest problem with these games. Level scaling. The games say you could do anything you could want. Oh, you can fight the gym leaders in any order. You can fight the titans in any order. Hell, you can fight the team star bosses in any order. But the game's not level scaling. So even if I went to Grusha first or Airy first, I'm still gonna have level 15 Pokemon against their level 50s. And I feel like that's the biggest issue that leaks into every route of the game. With free direction, right? That gives so much replayability to the game because, oh, maybe I want to challenge and I want to fight the Ice Gym Leader first. But because there's no level scaling, that ruins the replayability of the game. Aside from that, let's just dive into the separate routes of the game. First off, Victory Road, very generic, 8 gym leaders, Elite 4, champion. But like I mentioned before, the level scaling issue just destroyed any free direction there was in the game. Because sometimes, and this is from my own personal experience, I swear there was this one gym I went to where Nemona had level 20 Pokemon, but the gym trainers had level 40 Pokemon. And then the inverse would happen later where I was challenging a gym with level 20 Pokemon, but Nemona would have level 40s. Nemona will always battle you at specific points in the game, where depending on how many gym badges you have, but the level disparity does not make sense at times. And while I already complimented Terastillization and the use cases, I feel like the gym leaders themselves don't really use it well, aside from like maybe Iono. Iono, she has Miss Magius with Levitate, and so when she Terastillizes into an electric type, it essentially has no weakness. Like, that's a good use case for a Terra typing. However, then you get someone like Brassius, who has a rock type, who's good against fire and flying types, common weaknesses for grass types, but then he Terra types it into a grass type. And you're just sat there like, you had the upper hand, why are you giving me more of an advantage? So I feel like Terastillization was not very utilized by the AI. And going into Jita, I did not care about Jita, I'll be honest. Like, I know what they tried to do with Jita. They tried to make Jita sort of be like this imposing figure, sort of like Leon, where it's like, oh, she's involved in the game, more so than Diantha, but Jita, they don't give you much reason to care about her. She's not very impactful on the entire game. They tried to make her out to be like this tough top champion where even if Nemona is a champion, Jita's like the top dog. And she's also talking like, oh, I'm utterly incapable of holding back in battle. But then you start to wonder how she's the champion, the top champion to begin with, because one, her strategy sucks. Her ace, which is a Glamora, Toxic Debris, anytime it gets hit by a physical attack, it unleashes toxic spikes on the opponent. She uses that last. And secondly, her King Gambit, she doesn't even save until like her final Pokemon. I know everyone and their mother has said this, but she really should have led off with Glamora and then ended it off with King Gambit. Somehow Jita was more involved in the story than Diantha, but they still made her weaker and less of a character, which, props to you, Game Freak, you somehow managed to do what I thought was impossible. And ending it off with Nemona, I'm glad the story arc she went through was just like the entire time she was literally looking for a rival or someone to compete with her. I feel like when most people will talk about Nemona, they'll say that she's one bit, she doesn't really have much to her, and I don't really think that's a flaw. It's like, Nemona may be a bit of a knucklehead, but I feel like she's really funny a character where it's just like she's so battle obsessed that she just arrives at the most random of times. And there is potential for character development with her in the DLC. There's like when you're searching through Area Zero, Nemona talks about how her dad is like a big company owner and her sister is going to take over. I feel like when they introduce Nemona's dad and Nemona's sister, they're finally going to give us some character development for her on her own. But just for the main story, she's like, I just want a friend, I want a rival, I want to see you outcompete me. For someone who's a prodigy at battling, Nemona just really wants some competition, that's it, and I kind of respect that in all honesty. But moving on to the Path of Legends, I thought this was going to be the route that I cared the least about because it's essentially just totems, but because of Arven, I ended up loving it the most. Now, we can make all the jokes we want about how Koraidon and Miraidon are essentially glorified HM slaves, but I felt like the Titans and the story they tried to tell with Arven was actually really strong. Arven, he just wants to heal his little doggy, that's it. Because Sada and Turo were barely in his life, but Bustus, I think that's the Pokemon's name, is the only family Arven has, so when he got injured by a Paradox Pokemon, Arven literally wanted to go on a journey to fight the Titans, find a Herba Mystica, and literally just heal his dog. That's it. It's like, and it's such a stark contrast from its introduction, Because when you meet Arven, he's sort of rude, he sort of just disregards you, so you think he's going to be like the beat of the generation, but his story relevance actually make him like Lily and N tier. And the Titans themselves, I'm pretty sure I knocked out 2 of the Titans in one hit because I was over leveled. But I generally did like the Titans, and because I knew nothing about the Paradox going forward, the first Paradox Pokemon I ever saw was Giant Tusk just wandering around in the desert. And I just was like, what the hell? They gave Donphan an evolution? And then when I battled it, it said Giant Tusk, and I'm just like, this Pokemon doesn't even have a name? What the hell? So I like the whole exploring the Titans, Arven going on a journey and literally just catching a bunch of Pokemon outside to fight the Titans. And his whole theme was like, oh, I'm gonna fight you with all the Pokemon I met along the way. The friends we made is what's gonna help me bring you down. It's so stupid, but it's like, I can't even be mad at Arven. And finally, Starfall Street. This is the one that I was actually the most anticipating. Because I made that direct mental association that there was a gym leader route, a totem route, I thought Starfall Street was going to be completely unique, completely do its own thing. It's going to be very new, very experimental for Pokemon. I did not care about Starfall Street. Not only is it the least necessary of the 3 routes, because the gym leaders, they increase your level caps. Arven's route, it unlocks more mobility and options for Koraidon, but Starfall Street is literally just like, here's some weak points, here's some more crafting material for TMs, but aside from that, that's it. I don't know, I just felt the Team Star was kind of overwhelming. I did like the whole twist and logic about how Team Star are actually anti-bullies and they were essentially assembled to stop a whole bunch of bullying in school. And I do like the designs of the bosses and how Penny was like sort of like the fake out boss, where it's like you wouldn't think that a random student was a leader of an organization, but apparently she is. But diving into it, I felt the plot twist was very obvious. When Cassiopeia would sort of talk to you on phone and Penny would just sort of walk up, it was very obvious that Penny was Cassiopeia, and Cassiopeia/Penny were the leader of Team Star. Especially since there would always be monologue where it's like, oh no, not Aerie. The plot twist was very obvious. The Team Star raids essentially amounted to fighting a bodyguard outside the base, walking up to a chunk of Pokemon and pressing R a bunch of times, and then fighting the Team Star boss on top of the Starmobile, which... I forgot how funny those were. When I saw just like this gigantic Reverum like Pokemon just bust out onto the field, I died laughing. I feel like the Starmobiles were actually probably the most exciting things about the raids because you were literally battling impossible Pokemon. Now, impossible Pokemon is sort of like Pokemon that you can battle, but you can never actually obtain or catch. Like Primal Dialga, Eternamax, Eternatus. Pokemon you battle, but don't get. And I like how they had like customized abilities, custom typings from actual Reverum. So it's like when you actually catch one, you sort of think to yourself, can I get those Starmobiles? Nope. I like that. I like how they were just bosses for the moment that you fight once and you're probably never going to fight again. What I wish they would have done with Starfall Street is that each boss has their own thing, like their own sort of raid where not only do you need to get the respect of the boss, but you need to beat them in battle at the end of it, so none of the other Team Star members try to cause an uprising. So instead of just brute forcing your way through, you would sort of like have to do for Aerie you had to defeat 10 Pokemon in a row with a single Pokemon, and you're not allowed to heal. Or with Gaikumo, you have to like create a certain beat to make Gaikumo appear. Like just do something unique for each person where it doesn't feel repetitive. I kind of wish they would have went that route. And lastly, the whole Penny arc. Like I feel it will probably be most convenient to compare Penny to Marnie. Both of them are part of like Team Star, Team... I don't remember what that one team was from Galar was called. You know, Penny, you can actually tell that team was formed for a reason and they don't need to disband because like, they're essentially just an anti-bullying squad. It was just like, hey, some people are different, you don't need to bully them for it, and I feel like that was generally respectable. And even though Penny was distant, you can tell that there's sort of some complexity for her. Even though she may not get outright character development or change much at the end, you can definitely tell that she sort of regrets some things. Also, some people were like making theories that Penny is sort of like Peony's daughter, Peony's second daughter, and I'm just there like, I doubt it. I know Penny's turning Galar, but I doubt it. But finally, we finally arrived at the last aspect of the game, the way home. I'm just going to say this outright. I sort of love how all 3 routes converge into one ending, where you finally create your little friend group and they all get to know each other. But just even disregarding that, the whole build-up with the whole Sada, Toro, meeting them for the first time, finding out they're dead, I loved that so much! So much! Area 0 was dope. Area 0 was what people thought the entire game was going to be, but I love that there was just like this whole hidden section of the game. Where it's like you have a bunch of over-leveled Pokemon who have not seen the surface in their entire lives. But when you actually unleash the Paradox Pokemon when unlocking the security locks, the fact that Paradox Pokemon just take over essentially every aspect of Area 0 is hilarious. You have these ancient Pokemon that will literally kill you, that have stats that rival most legendaries. You literally have a Jigglypuff ancestor that has stats rivaling the legendaries introduced in this game. And then on top of that, you have ancestors to Mega Pokemon. When Sada sent out Roaring Moon and it looked like Mega Salamence and it got an attack boost right off the bat, I lost my shit. I was like, oh shit, am I about to get swept here? Oh no! That's not what happened, but still though, that scared the shit out of me. And I remember seeing a bunch of Iron Valiants in raid battles, and I'm just there, like, does that guy have a Mega Gallade? It also creates interesting aspects of the Pokemon world because, like, we've already seen fossil Pokemon, we've already seen ancient Pokemon in the form of legendaries, but the fact that you actually have a whole bunch of once-alive roaming Pokemon that had stats that rival legendaries, and then you have a bunch of future Pokemon, where it's like they took the whole genetic modification thing to 11. It also created an interesting dynamic in the game where it's like, we've already seen genetically modified Pokemon. Mewtwo, Ditto, Porygon, Genesect. We've seen man-made Pokemon before. But the fact that most fossilized Pokemon are part rock, you can sort of attribute that to, like, oh, the revival process makes them part rock. But Gen 8 was the first time we got fossil Pokemon that weren't part rock. So that makes you think to yourself, we have a bunch of future Pokemon that look like robots, but they don't have steel typing. Iron Thorns, rock electric. Iron Valiant, fairy fighting. It was like you start to realize humanity is going in a direction where they perfect genetic modification and they essentially create new life forms, new variants off scratch. That is world breaking for the Pokemon world. But enough stalling, let's get to the main juice of the game. Sada and Turo, the final bosses, were AI the entire time. When you first start off the game, you see Koraidon and Miraidon flying away from Area 0. So you realize at that moment in time, Sada and Turo died. They died as the game was starting, and that's how you first met Miraidon and Koraidon. Not only does this paint a bleak picture for the game because, like, you have characters that are canonically dead, you also have Arven who said that he hasn't seen his parents in like years. So it's like they generally just weren't in his life. But the AI had more appreciation for Arven in 5 minutes than his parents did in years. And also the final battle against a bunch of Paradox Pokemon you don't know the typings to, that was an uphill battle, especially when you're confronted by like half mega Paradox forms. Also, it just creates interesting, funny aspects like I mentioned before. Oh, the final boss is a robotic cave woman. That's literally what Sada is. And Turo is just, oh, I'm just a Chad. Sada and Turo are interesting characters just because they are canonically bad parents to Arven. There's like a line of text in one of the journals at some of the research stations which mentions how one of the parents walked out as soon as Arven was born. For Pokemon Scarlet, if you read one of the journal entries, Sada will mention how that man, quote unquote, walked out as soon as Arven was born. And I'm pretty sure that's referring to Turo. I'm pretty sure it will be the same in Pokemon Violet, where Turo will be talking about how that woman, Sada, walked out as soon as Arven was born. So it's like the parent that stayed around ended up dying, but they're the ones that created a time machine that would bring in Paradox Pokemon. And I think that's really all I need to say about the story. I liked it. I liked the final battle. Now, the DLC should be announced sometime in the next week or two. Chances are, if this video, by the time this video is released, the DLC has already been announced. Some people are theorizing that we're going to Southern Kalos. I doubt it. I'll believe it when I see it. I would like to go, but knowing Pokemon, I highly doubt it. I would love to see more Paradox forms, and just generally, Gen 9 to me is off to a great start, and I cannot wait to see what Gen 9 will do in the future. But otherwise, that's it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed. These have been my thoughts and opinions for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I will probably make another video ranking the Gen 9 Pokemon introduced, and a special video for you guys. If you're a fan of this channel, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. But otherwise, if you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, click that bell so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. This has been Nesrol. Hope you all enjoyed. Peace.